Today we celebrate. Today we party. I got my beer today. Very rarely do I drink, and very rarely do I drink on a weekday. And during the day, the sun is still out. We're drinking. We're celebrating a man who has gone 600 days laid up, feet up, not doing much of anything, taking a break from his triumph and from his great feat of beating Solecki for the Juneteenth WBC belt, and somehow keeping 600 days without fighting, somehow holding on to the belt, not even having to defend it. Imagine being that pampered in your life that you could just sit back for 600 days, keep your belt, keep your accomplishment, not have to defend it. And on top of that, win mythical battles on Twitter, win mythical battles on YouTube, and not even having to fight. Staying in the sweepstakes, staying in the conversation for a Canelo fight, a shot at the cash cow, a shot at the Ginger King without having to fight. Imagine it. So salute. Today we celebrate. Cheers to 600 days of inactivity, but still being able to stay top 2 or 3 in the middleweight rankings. Still able to keep your belt without defending it. And also being able to win all the mythical matchups without having to actually fight them. Quite the nice gig that Jermall Charlo has going. I got the Abita today, Abita strawberry, locally brewed beer. Don't know what y'all are drinking. If y'all are drinking, shout out to everybody at work. Shout out to everybody listening. Hit the like button. If you do one thing, hit the like button. If you're not subbed, hit the sub for the people watching the archives. And make sure to hit those alerts. What we've noticed throughout the HCP network is very few people are being alerted for whatever reason. So make sure to hit those alerts, and hopefully YouTube sends them out to people. This is hilarious. Hope Jermall calls in. Saludos, my guy Jesus M. OJ22 in the building. Hispanico, saludos to Matador. Who else we got? I heard Lara versus GGG might happen 5 years too late. That's another one. You know, boxing loves to do these things to us where they give us the fights beyond the expiration date. And that could be one. You know, another interesting thing, and I'll pull up the middleweight rankings in a minute, the sanctioning body rankings throughout the 4 different sanctioning bodies. Sergio Martinez is number 2 in one of the sanctioning bodies. I think the WBA. So we may end up with Arislandi Lara versus Sergio Martinez if Gennady Golovkin decides he doesn't want to fight Arislandi Lara. But at least Gennady Golovkin had the nerve, at least he was able to give us a unification fight in 2022. He gave us a unification, and at least he had the decency to vacate if he's not going to fight for the belt. If you're not going to fight for the belt, at least vacate, right? If you're not going to fight, at least Golovkin had the decency to fight. At least he's fighting, right? You go 600 days and you're holding up the rankings because you refuse to fight and you're able to hold on to the belt. How is this possible? I got dudes telling me I got to go to sanctioning body conventions if I really want to know about boxing. If you really want to know about boxing, why wouldn't you go get educated? Go to conventions. Go find out about why they do what they do. Why would I do that? I've read the rule books. I know the rule books up and down, and they don't adhere to the rule books. They bend their rules for certain fighters. So why learn the rules? They're not going to adhere to them. Salute my guy Nando in the building. Wheelchair man John, appreciate you coming through. Appreciate you always coming through and supporting. And have the nerve to ask Bivol for a fight for no belts in a weight class they don't belong. You know, these guys have more fights. Jermall Charlo has more fights ringside and in press conferences than he actually does in the ring these days. I got blocked yesterday from the chat. How'd you get blocked? From this chat? I don't know who would have blocked you from this chat. If somebody has a wrench and they block to Matador, unblock. But it seems like you're unblocked if you're on here. So I don't know what happened with that. I didn't block anybody. I worked at Sierra Nevada and appreciate you coming through, by the way. I worked at Sierra Nevada for a summer. It was like Charlie in the Chocolate Factory, only drunker allowed to taste the beer. at work. And some outfits still allow you to do that in 2023, right? Drink some beer at lunchtime. And we're that type of outfit here. Cali X Boxing CXB 2.0. You can drink your beer at lunchtime here. We'll allow that. Now, I wrote the article for itrboxing.com. It was released this morning. Gabe Rosado. One thing that really bothered me, and I mentioned the other things yesterday, and I mentioned the thing in the article about 5-11-1 in his last 18 fights with the no contest. But what really bothers me, and I try to observe what I'm doing and why things bother me, what really bothers me about the Gabe Rosado getting a shot at Zurdo Ramirez opening up as a minus 2,000 favorite, 20-1 favorite against Gabe Rosado. What bothers me about it the most, I think, is, and I hear people saying, show respect to the fighter, and I do. I respect the hell out of Gabe Rosado. He's come up the hard way, been in a lot of fights, fought tough guys. But what really bothers me about it is there is some guy out there. There are plenty of guys like this. There are hundreds of guys throughout this country right now who are working a construction job right now, who are working electrician job, plumbing job, whatever it is, working a hard 9 to 5, working 8 to 10 hours a day, sometimes out in the heat, sometimes out in the cold, and they're working paycheck to paycheck, and then they go after their job, instead of going home to their family or whatever, they go to a boxing gym. And their side hustle for right now is professional boxing. And they're trying to make their way up. They're trying to get that shot, right? They're trying to get that shot. And these guys, 99 out of 100 of them never get that shot because they're constantly overlooked. But these guys, they're working at construction jobs. There are plenty of Gabe Rosados out there in boxing gyms throughout the country. Don't doubt me on that. They're out there. They're working their construction jobs. They're going to the boxing gym, back aches, working through all kind of injuries, doing their jump rope, speed bag, heavy bag, etc., doing 5 rounds of sparring per night, whatever it may be. And they're working hard to get that shot. There are plenty of Gabe Rosados out there throughout the country, throughout boxing gyms. Anybody who's been in a boxing gym will tell you this. And they're fighting once every other month for a $500 paycheck that they'll see like $50 from after they pay everybody and after they pay taxes. And that guy, the Gabe Rosados out there, the younger Gabe Rosados are not getting their shot. So when Gabe Rosado gets his shot, you cheer it on. And you cheer on Gabe Rosado, and you hope that he pulls off upsets like he did against Beck the Bully, and that was the exception, not the rule. The rule is he's 5-11-1 with a no contest in his last 18 fights. He's gotten his shots. He's a worn-out bait dog at this point. Enough. Change the channel. There are plenty of younger underdogs out there like Gabe Rosado waiting for their shot. That's what bothers me the most about this, the redundancy of it. Fresh faces, give guys shots. When a Jermall Charlo is holding on to that belt for 600 days without defending it, and you know there are guys like Carlos Adames out there, guys down the rankings, who are waiting for that shot, and this dude is able to hold on to a belt for 600 days without defending it. How is this possible? The checks and balances are failing us. The sanctioning bodies are not supposed to let a dude hold on to a belt for 600 days without fighting. Leo Santa Cruz is not supposed to hold on to a belt for 3 years without defending his belt, without even fighting in the weight class. It's not supposed to happen. And when we call this stuff out, we're anti-fighter. Are you really criticizing Leo Santa Cruz? He's laying it all on the line. Jermall Charlo, stop being anti-fighter. Jermall Charlo's laying it out. I understand he is, but so is everyone else on the rankings. There are guys out there working hard to work their way up the rankings. They don't have people greasing the palms underneath the tables. They're working their way up to get up the rankings, and nobody's looking out for those fighters. The checks and balances need to solve that problem. We need to have sanctioning bodies who say, no, look, you're not going to hoard this belt. You're not going to do it. You're not going to sit on this belt. We have guys underneath you who want to fight for this belt, would kill to fight for this belt. We got to give them a shot. We got to get this thing moving. That's the main thing. We got to get this thing moving. It's becoming too redundant. No. Look, I understand you want to put Gabe Rosado in there because he's a name and he's an easy guy to beat. with a name, but no. There are plenty of Gabe Rosados out there who are fresher, who aren't as shop worn. We got to get somebody else a shot here. So that's my frustration with it. And my frustration even further with it is you're called anti-fighter when you call this out, when you say, no, look, Gabe Rosado's had a shot, and he's had a shot, and he's had another shot, and he's had another shot, and he's had another shot. Enough. Are you anti? No, I'm not anti-Gabe Rosado. I'm pro younger Gabe Rosados who are in the gym, killing themselves, waiting for their shot. They're sitting at home saying, why is this dude for the 18th time, like the 19th time getting a shot? I'm sitting here, I'm killing myself. I'm as good as him. Why don't I get my shot? Where's my shot? Where is it? Nobody's looking out for these fighters. The fighters at home down the rankings are saying, I'm fighting twice a year. I'm doing the right thing. I'm going through the process, and they got this dude. I understand he went through the process too, but now he's got the belt. He's been sitting on it for 600 days. He's been hoarding it for 600 days. He doesn't even have to defend it. Why don't I get a shot? Where's my shot? Where is it? Well, it's just the belt. Belts don't matter. It does matter to people. It does. It's a sport at the end of the day. Championships matter, but it does matter to certain fighters for sure. Even more so. A guy like Falco, a guy like Zarafa, a guy like Adames, they want the real belts. They're waiting for them. And they're waiting for their shots. And the process is held up. And I got dudes telling me I need to deal with the process. I need to deal with it. No, we're not going to deal with it. Rosado's the new Trojan horse. Why respect fighters when they don't respect us as fans? I still watch Gabe fight, but it does get old when there's others waiting. That's right. Like Jermall, Duck Dodgers, Charlo. When's the guy going to fight? Like, I don't understand this. I don't understand the thinking here from boxing fans. Why explain this away? It's not really the sanctioning bodies that I have a big problem with now, because I understand what they do. It's certainly not the boxing power brokers anymore, because I understand what they've done for a long time. I get it. It's the fans at this point. It's the fans that go along with this. It's the fans that explain it away. How can you explain away a dude sitting on a belt for 600 days without defending it? And on top of that, fighting mythical battles for him online. And on top of that, putting this dude in some sort of Canelo sweepstakes when he hasn't done anything. What are you doing? This dude doesn't know you exist, number one. And number two, what's with the Stockholm syndrome? Like, I see these dudes all the time on here, all the time, defending what Al is doing. And do you realize that Al doesn't even care enough about you to come out and do an interview and explain away his policies? He's got press secretaries that do that for him. Al's probably laughing at y'all at home. I can't believe these guys are still going along with. I can't believe these guys are still defending me. Look at this. I went through CBS. I went through NBC. I went through Fox now. I mean, Showtime money's running dry. I told you free boxing for all. What do I have to do to destroy this relationship? Al's probably looking at this like, how have I not destroyed this relationship by now? They're still out here defending me. I'm greasing WBC palms to where they can keep my guy with the belt for 600 days without actually fighting. And not only are they explaining it away, they're actually defending the guy online and saying that he beats this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy. I saw a comment people kept sending me yesterday on Twitter. The guy is saying Gennady Golovkin is holding up the division, the middleweight division, for so long. Excuse me. Gennady Golovkin at least had the decency to unify in 2022. If we think Murata, we can think what we want about Murata. That's fine, but he's still unified in a super fight over in Japan. And then he fought another super fight here in America against Canelo. But he at least had the decency to say, you know what? I'm not going to fight Falco. I'm not going to fight Falco. It's not going to happen. You can think whatever you want about that. That's fine. I'm not telling people what to think about that. If I had to get in Golovkin's head, I would think he's not going to fight that because he wants bigger fights at this point in his career because he knows that window is closing and he feels like he's earned back end money from money he was shorted on the front end. If I had to explain it away, that's what it would be. And it aligns with our interests as boxing fans because, and that's all I care about. I don't care about Golovkin's interests. Our interest as boxing fans is seeing the best fight. So if Golovkin ends up fighting a Munguia instead of a Falco, I'm all for it. If Golovkin comes out and says, Lara's 39 years old, it's not going to be a fun fight, I'd rather go fight Munguia, I'm for it. Like, the belts matter. They do. But for certain fighters, they feel like I'm beyond it at this point. And some of them are the exceptions to the rule. And I think Golovkin's at that point in his career, right? To where he's like, I got 2-3 fights left in me. Let me go get the big money fights. Munguia could possibly be that. So if that's the end game, fine. But if the end game is I just don't want to fight this guy and that guy because I feel like they're underneath me, and he goes to fight another easy opponent, then I'm not down for that either. I'm not going to explain that away for sure. But what I'm saying ultimately is at least this dude had the decency to vacate and say, you know what, I'm not going to fight this. Let's get it moving. Let Falco and Zarafa fight for the vacant belt. Let them do it. Let them go fight for the vacant belt, and we keep the process moving, right? Instead of a dude sitting at the top for 600 days without doing anything and hoarding the belt. Give somebody else the shot. His last fight, it was in the middle of the pandemic. I don't remember. Charlo fought, I believe it was June 2021. It was 600 days ago is when it was. Exactly. And he fought Selecki, and he didn't look all that good, and he won the Juneteenth belt. The Juneteenth belt obviously doesn't hold enough leverage because they want to sit on the main belt for their leverage and say they're a champ. But how do you have a guy number 1 and number 2 in your rankings when he hasn't fought in 600 days? I don't understand it. Like, if a dude doesn't fight for over a year and there's no plans, like, how do you have that guy as your champion? How is he able to hold on to the belt? I asked the same question on Leo Santa Cruz. How is he able to hold on to the belt for 3 years when he hasn't even competed in the weight class? How is that possible? Jermall ran up on Bivol. Bivol said, what belt you got? And I guarantee you, I said it at the time, I guarantee you Bivol for a moment did not even know who Jermall Charlo was. It's like, who is the what? Then you realize you're at middleweight, I'm at light heavyweight. What is this? What is this? Calix, are you at least 160, 168? Charlo will fight you. I can't make that weight. Once was a time when I could. I can't make that weight. It's sad that Gabe Rosado would be Charlo's best fight if they fought. Salute my guys, Batman Boxing in the building. Only 2 guys that unified after 40, B-Hop and Golovkin. And we could think whatever we want about Murata as a fighter, like I said, but it was a unification fight. He unified. He did something meaningful in the division as of recent. And he at least fought. That's the thing. Like, you got to fight. Fight somebody. I don't understand this. Like, we talked about the plague of inactivity on this channel constantly. It's one of the biggest plagues in boxing, if not the biggest plague. Inactivity, redundancy. We keep seeing the same movies over and over and over. Like we said yesterday, I don't want to see any more Kevin Hart romantic comedies. I've seen it. Every 6 months, Netflix rolls out Kevin Hart romantic comedy. Kevin Hart romantic comedy. I've seen it. I've seen all the Adam Sandler movies. They're all the same. Give me something new. Give me a fresh face. Give me something new. Give me a new concept, something. I don't need to see Gabe Rosado in there for the 19th time getting rolled. Like, and I certainly don't need to see a dude sitting on a belt for 600 days without even fighting. That's the thing. At least he fought somebody. Charlo's would duck. Lara, who's doing business with Golovkin? Top Rank was never interested in PBC, only got IOUs. So Golovkin, from what I understand, is a free agent. And, we went out there to Canelo versus Golovkin 3, and I witnessed Steve Kim tell Top Rank executive that he needs to retire. Like this, and then the Top Rank executive, no. We're gonna go further. We got belts at 160. We're gonna go further. So they're gonna go further. Like, he's gonna fight, and he may reach that point where he chases back in money so much that eventually he gets planted. Like, eventually he gets face planted. When you fight that type of style, Nando, That type of style is not, this isn't a Bernard Hopkins type of style. This is a type of style where it's fast and furious. It's a type of style where you're trading a lot. It's a type of style where you have to fight at a high output. And you're going to take a lot of shots. So does that translate at 41, 42, 43 years old? I don't know. I don't think so. So Golovkin may stick around for too long. We're hearing Manny Pacquiao could fight Conor Benn. And this is the stuff that I get afraid of because I witnessed living down here in the Gulf Coast. Roy Jones was seen as an alien. When Roy Jones walked into the room, it was like the dude was floating. He was a franchise down here. Everybody knew Roy Jones. Even if you didn't follow boxing, he was seen as invincible. Then he gets knocked out by Antonio Tarver. Then he gets knocked out by Glenn Johnson. Then he goes to Australia and gets knocked out. You're like, what is this? How is this happening? And then he's going to fight another exhibition match in a couple months. You're like, what is going on? If this dude would have retired at the right point, he would have been seen as invincible and one of the greatest to ever do it, like at the tippy top. At the tippy top. And if you're giving Bernard Hopkins credit for doing what he's doing in the 40s, you have to at the same time knock Roy Jones for doing what he was doing in his 40s as well, right? So he starts to fall on the all-time rankings. Bernard Hopkins starts to climb. And now we're at a point where at their peak, we would have never said Bernard Hopkins is better than Roy Jones, not even close. But now we're at the point where Bernard Hopkins is possibly seen as greater than Roy Jones all time. And that's because he sticks around for too long, right? Maybe he's chasing back-end money. Perhaps he just can't give it up. Perhaps it's a high to him. He needs to be in the spotlight. He needs to fight. He needs to compete. But I'm telling you, there comes a point when that's a detriment. And if Manny Pacquiao sticks around and fights a Conor Benn, it could get ugly. If he sticks around and fights whoever at the top, an Errol Spence, it could get ugly. Don't sacrifice your name for some paydays and wanting to stick around. And I'm not here to tell people what to do with their career, but man, I would love to see some of these guys ride off into the sunset. I would love to see Golovkin say, you know what? I had my time. Let me leave this to these other guys at 160 and see what they can do. But I like that he's vacating and he's saying, give one of these other guys a shot. I'm going to go elsewhere. I'm not going to sit out here on the IBF belt and hoard it like Jermall Charlo is doing with the WBC. Let somebody else fight for it. I'm going elsewhere. Like if Charlo's going to move up to 168, vacate the belt. And if he's not going to vacate the belt, strip him. Strap season needs to turn to strip season. Strip these dudes. If Errol Spence Jr. is going to fight at 154, he's going to fight as mandatory at 147 at 154. And he's going to leave those 3 belts while he goes up there. And they're not on the line. Strip them. For the love of God, strip them. Munguia, Liam Smith, or Lara, I imagine it will be one of those guys. My guy Eldon, cholesterol in the building. Heyman more elusive than Bigfoot. That he is. That he is. We've seen Bigfoot more than we've seen Al Heyman, or around the same amount of time. June 2021. That's the last time he fought. This will be my 4th fight since Jermall last fought. Duval Grind MMA in the building. Appreciate you coming through, brother. Juan Mantil Macias, a bad man. He retired Jermall. Mike Tyson's still yelling at Jermall to say a damn name. Say somebody. Do something. I'm drinking because it's a celebration. Eldon. It's a celebration today. We're celebrating a dude. We got some locally brewed beer. We're celebrating a dude who can fight. He can pull this off. Not too many fighters can pull this off, Eldon. Listen to this. The dude hasn't fought in 600 days. 600 days. And he's still the champion. Imagine like you winning a championship and then you're like the eternal champion. Like you don't have to defend it. Defend it. What is this? Like imagine Jermall Charlo getting that call from Al Heyman like next week and saying, well, the WBC is telling you like you got to defend the belt. What do you mean defend the belt? What does that mean? Like you have to actually fight for it. I don't get to keep it. What do you mean? I don't get to just keep this thing forever? No. You gotta defend this thing. Like You got to defend it. What do you mean? I don't know. I don't get the concept. What do you mean defend it? I want it. I get to keep it, right? No, it's not a participation trophy. You have to defend it. You have to defend it to keep it. Jermall just this whole time thought he just kept the belt. He just puts it up in the trophy case and it's there forever. No, you have to defend the belt. Like, dude, don't you realize what's been going on? Like, I've been greasing their palms under the table for like a year and a half. You got to come out and defend this thing. I thought I just kept it. I don't know. Like Lions only, Lions Den. I just thought I kept this thing in my den. No. You got to keep it. Like you got to defend it. So this dude's been inactive for 600 days and he's still a champion. That's quite the feat. And on top of that, Eldon, like this dude not only gets to keep his belt, like he's a champion forever because to a lot of people, he's the number one middleweight still, just because. And on top of that, he wins every single mythical matchup between 160 and 168. Munguia, no. Golovkin, old. He gets hit too much, sucks. Charlo destroys him. Adames, no. Adames, trash. Charlo destroys him. Moves up to 168. Plant, no. Destroys him. Canelo, oh, come on. We know Canelo doesn't fight black fighters. Charlo would destroy. Charlo would walk all over Canelo. Too much lateral movement. Too much lateral movement. Okay. Even though the Charlos have been known to struggle with lateral movement. This is where we're at. This dude is like a perpetual champion, and he's perpetually the mythical matchup champion. It's some sort of Jermall Charlo theorem we got working here. So that's what we're celebrating today because it's quite the achievement to pull this off. Like, what's the incentive to actually do stuff? And this is what I've been asking myself. Like, what's the incentive to do stuff? We have checks and balances that are not working, right? We know what the power brokers do. Promoters, managers, advisors, network execs. We know what they do. They try to protect their assets at all costs. We know that, but there's checks and balances. The first checks and balance should be the sanctioning bodies. They should say, no, dude, it's been like 300 days. Maybe, just maybe we need something. Maybe. 400 days, look, get something going. 500 days. At 600 days, dude, this dude should be stripped. This dude should not be sitting on the belt still. Move the process so somebody else has a shot if this dude isn't going to be doing anything. Get the process going. So that checks and balances is messed up completely. It's warped. Warped. Sanctioning bodies don't checks and balance anything. They're working with them. They're working with them to create this artificial environment to where the incentive system is broke. It's broken. What's the incentive for Jermall Charlo to actually fight top competition if he mythically wins all those battles anyway? And on top of that, what's the incentive to fight if you can just keep the belt forever? I asked the same thing of Leo Santa Cruz. Why do anything at featherweight if you're the featherweight champion and you don't have to fight at featherweight? Just think about that. Think about what I just said. You're the featherweight champion and you haven't fought at featherweight for 3 years. You're not even a featherweight anymore, but you're the featherweight champion still. No checks and balances. And then the ultimate checks and balance should be the fans. The fans should be demanding the fights that need to happen. The fans should be saying, this dude hasn't fought in 600 days. This dude hasn't fought in 600 days. Oh, you're anti? No, I'm not anti-fighter. I'm just pointing out like the obvious. The sky is blue, right? It's blue. The sky is blue. There are fish in the ocean. We can point out the obvious. We can point out the obvious. There's an objective truth, an objective fact that this dude hasn't fought in 600 days. And it's an objective fact that if he hasn't fought in 600 days, he should not still be the champion. The Milwaukee Bucks won the championship in 2021. Are they still the champion at the end of 2022? Well, they have to defend it to see. Are they still the champion in 2023? They have to defend it to see. They can't just say, hey, we won the championship in 2021, so we're still a champion. No, actually, no, you're not. You're not. So it's the fans' job to speak out on this stuff and say, but when you have a growing number of fans, explain this stuff away. because it's their favorite fighter, because they follow these fighters for surface area things. So they're going to explain it away. They're not here for substance. But I don't get it. Like, I don't get, why in the hell would you explain that away? Why in the hell would you defend a dude having a belt when he hasn't fought in 600 days? If I was talking about Charlo, I'd drink too. How many days of inactivity does Spence have? 800. Spence fought against Ugas. So Spence, by the time he fights, I'm hearing it's late May, by the time he fights Keith Thurman. And by the way, you're right. It's not even going to be a fight at 147, so it's going to go longer than that. He'll go almost 2 years without, if he does come back down to 147, he'll go almost 2 years without fighting at 147. And he'll keep that belt, believe me. He'll keep that belt. Jermall messing up his brother also. Jermall should have already moved up to 160 for legacy enhancement instead of staying at 154 to fight prospects. Thank you. This is the other part of this. You're holding up the rankings. You're holding up other guys getting shots. You're holding up your own career. And on top of that, you're holding up your brother's career because your brother's sitting there at 154. And I guarantee you, Jermall is looking at this and saying, he's not going to say it, but I'd like to go up to 160. I'd like to become a multi-division champion. I've already done what I need to do at Undisputed. Do I stick around and fight young lions like Tim Tszyu, Sebastian Fundora? Or do I go up and fight more vulnerable guys at 160 and call myself a multi-division champion and also a middleweight champion? And this is what people need to understand. This is a sexy division. It's a historic division. This is the first division in boxing. So when we talk about your traditional 8 divisions in boxing, heavyweight, light heavyweight, middleweight, welterweight, lightweight, there's supposed to be more significance to that, right? There used to be guys, Paul Williams, Sergio Martinez, that moved up to middleweight because it was middleweight. Sergio Martinez could have stayed at 154. He could have. He understood the significance of coming up to middleweight and winning that title, being the lineal middleweight champion. It was not taken for granted. Cotto wasn't a middle. Cotto was never a middleweight. He comes up, beats Sergio Martinez because he realizes what comes with middleweight champion. Canelo, he understood what middleweight champion meant. He understood it. Paul Williams came all the way up from welterweight. He was in a boots in his situation. He couldn't get the fights at 147 other than Margarito. He got not Collazo. God, I forget the dude's name that actually beat him in the first fight and he knocked him out in the second round. But he only got those fights, so he moved up actually 2 weight classes, and he was supposed to fight Canelo until he got into the motorcycle accident. But these guys recognized what came with being the middleweight champion. They understood it. And now, let me bring this up real quick. I want you to, I'm going to try not to puke when you see this, because I saw this and I wanted to throw up all over the place. Look at this. Look at this right here. Let me take this super chat down real quick. And I appreciate that, Nando. Always appreciate the support. Look at this. If the AIDS virus was a division, this is what it would look like. Look at this. I mean, just look at it. Doesn't this make you want to throw up all over the place? Look at this division. Look at it. This is worse than 9/11. Look at this. Charlo. He's at the top in one sanctioning body. Hasn't fought in 600 days. Adames, I think he fought once last year. Golovkin, at 41 years old, Golovkin was a 2 sanctioning body champion at 41 years old. Erislandy Lara is 39. Yanni Beck's begging for fights out there. And he's looking pedestrian. And he's still begging for fights. He's seen as some sort of boogeyman. Janny Beck. Chris Eubank Jr. was number 2. And he just got knocked out in the 4th round by Liam Smith. Goodness gracious. Falco and Zarafa at the top. Sergio Martinez, WBA, number 2 ranked contender. So I want to throw out the scenario right here. Gennady Golovkin drops the IBF. So Falco and Zerafa, let's say they're ordered to fight for the vacated belt, right? Golovkin's now given 15 days to settle and see if they can work out a deal for Lara. Let's say Golovkin says, no, I don't want to fight Lara either. I'm just going to vacate the belts. I feel like I'm above him at this point. I've been fighting for belts for so long. I'm going to chase a bigger fight. You have a situation in which you could have Erislandy Lara versus Sergio Martinez in 2023. Guys, I don't know if you noticed this. This isn't 2015 rankings. We're talking about 2023, fellas. 2023, we could have a scenario in which Erislandy Lara at 39 years old fights 50-year-old one-legged Sergio Martinez for a legitimate title if Zerafa goes the IBF route. I'm telling you, I'm not joking. This is worse than 9/11, this thing right here. This is awful. This is the worst division I've ever seen in my life. This is the middleweight division. Middleweight. This is Bernard Hopkins' division. This is Marvin Hagler's division. This is Jermaine Taylor versus Kelly Pavlik. This is what we're talking about right here. That's the history behind this division. And look at it. Look at this. This is disgusting. This is like the homecoming queen coming back for the 20-year anniversary. And she's like 800 pounds. That's what that is. You're like, what happened to her? She was a dime. She was a dime piece. It's a dime piece. She comes back for the 20-year anniversary and she's like a gazillion pounds. That's the middleweight division. I'm surprised he is not getting bored with his career. WBC is a disgrace. No surprise. They all are. They all are. It's sad that he's 32 with no notable fights. It is. It is. And they're going to blame, well, Golovkin could have fought him at this point. I'm seeing that with Bubu Andre. Bubu Andre is duck. Bubu Andre could have fought Zach Parker twice. He could have fought Yanni back twice. Do we not call those ducks? Look at the betting odds for Charlo's fights. Look at the betting odds for Bubu Andre's fights. They simply weren't doing anything. I'm supposed to sit here as a boxing fan and pull out the small violin for these guys for not getting shots when they're not even active. And when they are active, they're in situations where they're 10-1 favorites, 20-1 favorites, and they look pedestrian in the fights. Bubu Andre is in mismatches all the time and can't knock guys out. Supposed to feel sorry for that? Charlo's ducking that smoke. Leo Santa Cruz, the ultimate ass kisser, named his son Ali. Activity matters, that it does. Cotto also was trying to make history for the island at the time. And I'm not trying to explain that away, like anything with Cotto. Like, he understood the significance of middleweight. He understood it. PBC holding up 126, 147, 160. These divisions have nothing going on. Middleweight's disgusting, man. A4 Castaño, never forget. I think you're talking about Paul Williams. Carlos Quintana. That's who it was. Carlos Quintana beat Paul Williams in that first fight. That shocked me at the time. And Paul Williams came out and obliterated him in the rematch. PBC holds boxing hostage. I hate PBC. And don't feel bad saying that, by the way. Don't feel bad about saying you hate a boxing power broker, because they're naturally working against our interests. It's seldom that our interests align, right? The power broker and the boxing fan, but so you're constantly fighting a battle with them. But you hope that at least 50% of the time you win that battle. The issue now that we're trying to point out, and people get mad, like boxing fans get mad when we point this out, and it's because sometimes we talk about their favorite promoter or advisor or fighter, is we're losing more of these battles every day. We used to win 50, maybe 60% of these battles. on what fight should happen next. Now we're winning like 20, maybe 20%, maybe. And then when we win those 20%, everybody cheers. Oh, you see? They do it. Like they see, you see, Al gave us this fight, right? Like you should be cheering this on. It's like, dude, thank you, I guess. Like 2 out of 10. And then on some of those 2 out of 10s, I get a pay-per-view. I'm supposed to be slurping these dudes. Sergio Martinez is ranked number 2. That's it. Like 2023, Sergio Martinez is ranked number 2 by a sanctioning body at middleweight. First of all, that illustrates how bad middleweight is. Number 2, it's like it illustrates how bad the sanctioning bodies are, because what has Sergio Martinez done to get ranked number 2 in a sanctioning body? What has he done? I guess he's fighting, right? He's done more than Charlo the past 600 days. That's for sure. Get things moving. Why is Eubank ranked so high? He just got KO'd. That's going to be updated. So that was the latest rankings. So that's going to be updated. Wait, Sergio Martinez, he's ranked number 2. He's ranked number 2. You'll take Sergio over Jermall. Martinez fought Cotto 9 years ago. He was done then. Exactly. Jermall next opponent, 50-year-old El Maravilla. Doesn't matter. I'll still take Sergio over Jermall. I'm getting a lot of that. At minimum, Charlo should be a champion in recess. GGG is on his way out. And see, yeah, at minimum, you're right. But I even hate that. Like champion in recess, interim champion. Can we please get rid of all these designations? Can we please get rid of all these titles? Please. Simplify the process. I don't have a problem with the 4-belt system. I don't have a problem with having a four belts, 4 sanctioning bodies, running things, and then having a Ring magazine title as well to hopefully designate a lineal. I don't have an issue with that. The issue is when the sanctioning bodies designate all these titles, and like I got content creators telling me that Tank Davis is a legit 3-division champion. And not even the sanctioning body will tell you that this dude has the main belt with their sanctioning body. But the content creators will still tell you that he's a 3-division champion. And this is what clouds the process, because somebody will ask you, hey, this guy's a 3-division champion. No, actually, he's not. He's not a 3-division. What do you mean? You have to explain the complex to them. It's hard to simplify the complex, and simplicity wins today. We're in a day and age where things are moving fast. People get bored quick. People's attention span has lowered significantly in the past decade or so. So now more than ever, we need to simplify the process. We need to say, no, this is the one guy. And these are the clear and concise rules as to how this one guy needs to move, with few exceptions. There are exceptions. He can chase a bigger fight if he wants to, but there are a few exceptions here. And when you have a guy who hasn't fought in almost 2 years, 600 days, and he's still your champion, that tells you there's something wrong with your sanctioning body. And if you're explaining it away as a content creator and as a fan, that tells me that there's something wrong with you as a content creator and a fan if you're explaining this away. If I need to simplify this. 600 days, fellas, like 600 days. You should not go 600 days without participating in your profession, your craft, and still own your title. How many people can get away with that? How many people in the chat can walk away from their job for 600 days and still have that title? BoxRec says that Jermall Charlo is inactive. He's an inactive fighter. Boxing fans with 2 brain cells to rub together will tell us that Jermall Charlo is an inactive fighter. But the WBC and the power brokers and the dumbed down boxing fans, the propagandized boxing fans, will be out there and tell us that no, actually he's an active fighter as far as today. And on top of that, he's a champion. How is he a champion if he's not fighting in championship fights for over 600 days? How is that possible? How is it possible? Explain it to me. Explain it to me like I'm 5 years old. And they're going to try to explain it to me, and they're going to tell me I'm not educated enough to understand it. And you expect to keep people in the door doing that? So I respect the dude. Shout out my guy, Bruce Gass, OG. PBC started off so promising. It did. And that's the thing. Like this, don't discount this. This is what's going on with content creators in the LDBC, for example. And we need to point them out when it comes to this. And people don't like addressing this stuff because it's difficult to address. But the LDBC, when they came in, a lot of their content creators latched on to Al Heyman and a lot of Al Heyman's fighters, which is fine. You have every right to latch on to certain fighters for whatever reason possible. Well, what do we talk about on this channel? The more surface issues, the more you latch on to fighters for surface issues, the greater percentage that they're going to let you down over time, because you're not following them and you're not supporting them due to real foundational substantive issues. Like I say it all the time, I didn't roll out of bed and become a Canelo fan. I didn't. I really didn't like Canelo all that much when it first started. Pernell Whitaker, I mean, whoever, Tim Bradley, these guys, Arturo Gatti, Carl Froch. I didn't roll out of bed. What did they all have in common? They all have strong resumes. They all tested themselves. So I have a foundation as a boxing fan. I have value system. I have rules as a boxing fan. And every one of those fighters, every fighter is going to let you down at some point. Cotto fighting a catchweight. Cotto's my favorite modern fighter, but fighting a middleweight title at 155 is like, what is this? It's stupid. Don't do it. But he does it, and he lets you down at certain points, but there are exceptions. That's not the rule. That's the exception. But when guys that you start following for service issues start to let you down because they're not moving how you want them to move, it's harder for you to call them out over time. So more so you're going to explain it away. So when these guys believe Al Heyman coming in 2013, 2014, a decade ago with the PBC and saying, we're going to take boxing out of HBO, Showtime, whatever. We're going to move everything to network TV. We're going to get rid of the belts. We're going to have one PBC belt. We're going to have a huge roster. We're going to have a UFC type of system here. And it's going to be free boxing for all. You're not going to have to pay for anything. And as we know, anybody with two brain cells to rub together by following politics, there's nothing more expensive than free. So when he promises free boxing for all, and then the decade later it gets to, not only is it not free boxing for all, you're going to pay for Plant Benavidez. You're going to pay for a non-title fight between Errol Spence and Keith. You're going to fight for, we're going to take Canelo off the zone for the Caleb Plant fight, and you're going to pay for that. You're going to pay for Tank versus Ryan. You're going to pay for every single high-quality extra matchup that we put together. So when they're, and that's why apparently why they started to support him. But when we're so far away from that, and then you have these same content creators explaining this stuff away and explaining it as this is actually good for boxing. We're actually in a golden era of boxing. Al Heyman is actually a savior when they're still explaining this stuff away in 2023, when a Bud versus Errol fight falls through, when we're still in February, what is it, February 9th? February 9th. We've been talking about this fight since last summer, and we still don't have a signed agreement because of a rematch clause on PBC's side. I have to ask myself at some point, why did you become a fan of Al Heyman at the beginning? Was it because of free boxing for all, or was it for surface issues? And if you're still here for the surface issues, then you're doing it at the expense of boxing fans and boxing at large. So don't and just admit that. That's fine. But don't come out here and say that we're the ones who don't understand. Golovkin versus Sergio in Kazakhstan. Be a terrible night for Sergio. But he did say he wanted Golovkin recently. I think Khalik's next live should be about the fact that Tank only fights Tijuana taxi drivers. He's never fought black fighters and got a belt fight Gamboa. And shout out my guy, Ron Boy Fresh on Twitter. He might never see this, but he always talks about how, and once again, touchy subject, but Tank Davis's opponents are always of the brown complexion and on the cheaper side, right? So I'll just leave it at that. I'll leave it at that. Hopefully Golovkin fights Smith or Lara next. I don't know if Eubank versus, because they were addressing that last comment, like they were talking about, people are actually talking about Tank moving up to 140 and fighting a pro grade, like if the Ryan fight falls apart. And Ryan, to his credit, like Ryan's behaving like a fighter to me. I got to give Ryan credit. Like, and I've been off put when it comes to Ryan. And Nando, I'll tell you that. Like, I don't really like how he moves. But Ryan talked this fight into where it is now. And the fact that we're still talking about a rematch clause tells me that they're trying to put poison pill after poison pill after poison pill in this deal. But Ryan is still there. Ryan's out there today. Ryan said he's a tank that's in retreat. I've never heard of such a thing. He's a tank that's in retreat. And Ryan said no rematch clause. And I don't understand how people can explain this away too, because there are people out there doing it, right? Tank Davis is a minus 260 to minus 360 favorite no matter where you look. I mean, depending on where you look. So let's say a 3-1 favorite. He's a 3-1 favorite. 3-1. And he's asking for a rematch clause, which is fine. Like Canelo, if we're being fair, rematch clauses didn't start a couple days ago. Like rematch clauses, Canelo 5-1 favorite against Bivol. I think he had a rematch clause. So it's we got to call everybody out. But here's the thing. We're talking about networks here. So they're saying the rematch, even if we lose, even if we're knocked out in the first round, we still need the rematch on our terms. And that's something I can't get behind. Unless the market dictates that. The market still dictates that Canelo's the cash cow, right? Against Bivol. So he can still dictate some sort of terms, even though Bivol's going asking for the fight at 168, by the way. But if, conceivably, if like theoretically, if Ryan Garcia knocks Tank Davis out in the first round, let's say that happens, who's the bigger star at that point? Is it Ryan or Tank? But Tank would still get a lion's share of the money, apparently, and also get the rematch on Showtime. In the zone, like I got it. Like at this point, they've given up everything as far as this fight. The zone's got to be looking at this. Oscar's got to be looking at this. Like, no. You're negotiating a second fight before this fight actually happens. You're a 3-1 favorite asking for a rematch clause. No. Why can't we just let the market dictate? I'm against rematch clauses everywhere. I'd rather see, and dude, people know I'm a fan of Canelo, but I'd rather see Bivol versus Better Biev. I would. The rematch clause may be getting in the way. I understand why Canelo's doing it, but come on. So when I watch this, and I watched a Eubank Jr. fight a Liam Smith, you know, he's going to fight him again because he wants to exercise his rematch clause. I'm like, what is this? What is this? No, let the market dictate if the fight happens or not. I wanted to see Fury versus Usyk for Undisputed more than I wanted to see AJ versus Usyk 2. It was threadbare for me at that point. Let AJ work his way back into the rematch by what he's doing in the ring. But instead, we got the rematch clause that held up Undisputed even further than it was already held up. Because it was held up before in court when it came to, we had to do Fury versus Wilder 3 instead of getting to Undisputed. Everybody wanted Fury versus AJ. But we had to do Fury versus Wilder 3. Rematch clauses. Rematch clauses. Redundancy. We keep going back to that. Have enough confidence in yourself to say, I'm a 3-1 favorite against Ryan Garcia. A 3-1 favorite. I win all the mythical matchups. All of them. Amongst my fans online. Even though I have no big win in my career, my best win is Pedraza. I have one real title. I'm still in top 10 pound for pound rankings. So I'm going to have enough confidence in myself. I win all the mythical matchups. I win all of them. Haney, easy. Lomachenko, easy. I win that against that Euro bum. All of them. Step up to 140. Prograis, easy. Easy. Any of them. Josh Taylor, win that fight. I knock out everybody. Willie Pep, easy. Any lightweight that Roberto Duran, I win that one. Win that one, bum. Prime Mayweather 135, win that one. Tank wins all the mythical matchups. So if you do that, at least have enough confidence in yourself to say, I'm a 3-1 favorite against Ryan. I don't need the rematch clause. And if we're going to do the rematch clause, we do it. If you win, we do it on your terms. Fine. Like at some point, dude, sack up and stand up to Al Heyman. Sack up. And say, no, look, Al, I know you're trying to put these poison pills in. I know you're trying to hold up whatever obstacles. You're trying to get as much leverage. But come on. Just make the fight. Just make the damn fight. Let's get past these court days. Let's make the fight. Let's start training. And let's fight Ryan Garcia. Enough. And I have boxing fans explaining this away to me. Rematch clauses have always been around. The new age boxing fans want us to adopt their new age policies because they say they're better than the traditional policies. But then when it comes to traditional policies that have been around like rematch clauses that are bad for boxing, they want us to keep those. They want us to keep whatever's bad for boxing because they've been propagandized by boxing's power brokers. And enough is enough. I'm tired of these dudes. It's not the power brokers I have an issue with now. It's not the A-side fighters behaving like divas that I have an issue with now. It's the boxing fans, the fanagers who explain this stuff away constantly. My bad. Let me back up. Rematch clause should only be in certain situations. Tank is another one with mythical matchups. I stay telling people he's been ducking top comp for 6 years. Ducked Linares, Loma, Farmer. You're right there with me. He's 101, the one being Mayweather, obviously. He's apparently 100-0 in fantasy fights. Al Heyman is the cancer of boxing. Haney, Basora, fighters. It's unfortunate. Some people will defend fighters no matter what. They will. Like, that's what I'm saying, man. Don't defend fighters who don't know you exist at the expense of boxing. Please. Because you're ruining it for other boxing fans. You're ruining it for those of us who are just around, and you can try to frame it any kind of way you want because they'll project. Anytime I criticize Al, anytime I criticize some of Al's fighters, like when I criticize Bob and when I criticize Trust Fund Eddie, which I do a lot, I don't generally catch flack. But when I come after Al, when I come after Oscar and his fake abs, I don't really get much flack. But when I criticize Al and when I criticize some of his fighters for the pay-per-views, for the inactivity, for fighters sitting on shelves, for fighters not sticking up for themselves, and I give credit to them too. Stephen Fulton Jr., if he's demanding this fight and he goes to Japan to fight in a way, full credit, he becomes one of my favorite fighters. I wish him success. I don't really know what to do with that because I've been a fan of Inoue for a long time, but if a dude is behaving like Stephen Fulton Jr. and going over there and saying, no, you're not going to stop me from getting this fight. I'm going to speak up for myself. I got to support that. So that's a tough one for me where I actually like a fight like that. I hope both fighters' stocks rise. I hope that's a legacy fight where both look great. And we say, you know what? Those are both Hall of Fame fighters. I hope that happens. But anytime I criticize Al and some of his fighters, I'm called Hitler. I'm called David Duke. I'm called some sort of racist. I'm doxxed. And it shouldn't be that way. As long as my, as long as what I'm saying is warranted, as long as what I'm saying is good for boxing, why would you disrespect me in that way and make it personal when I'm just trying to look out for what's better for boxing as a boxing fan? And I'm ultimately, my job as a boxing fan is this. My job is to buy the products. My job is to buy the apps, buy the pay-per-views when I feel they're warranted, and actually buy them instead of hack them. And on top of that, my job is to get in front of my TV and watch the fights. And my job is to hold the power brokers, try to make them honest, hold them accountable when they're not doing things that they should be doing, when they're not giving us the best fights, when they're not conducting this thing like the sport. Because to me, as a boxing fan, this is best when it resembles a sport, not a business. Anytime we're constantly talking about, yeah, but it's a business. Anytime we're constantly adding that to the end of a sentence, yeah, but it's a business, that's bad. It's bad. And like I said, it's a constant battle, right? Y'all gotta understand this. If people take one thing from this podcast, is this: it's a constant battle between us and the power brokers. Is they want what they want, we want what we want. And a lot of times that's not going to align. It's not. They'd rather put, let's say, a Jermall Charlo in there when he comes back with a guy that he's a 20-1 favorite against. It's our job to say, no, it's not acceptable. When Azerto Ramirez versus Gabe Rosado was announced 2 days ago, perfect example, it's my job as a content creator to write an article, which I did on itrboxing.com, which you can go check out. You can catch the link on my Twitter page, and say, no, I don't want to watch this fight. It's a 20-1 favorite. I've seen enough of Gabe Rosado in these fights. 5-11-1 with a no contest in the last 18 fights. I'm educated enough to know the facts and to call this out and say there are plenty. Look, if you want to put Zerto Ramirez in a fight like this, there are plenty of younger guys like Gabe Rosado looking for a shot. For whatever reason, it's become widely acceptable that if a guy comes off of a loss, he can fight. I don't want to disrespect by calling it this, but a guy he can win against, a 20-1 favorite. If we're going to do that, at least give me something fresh. It's our job to hold them accountable. So when we're losing more of these battles, we're only winning when it used to be around 50%, but now we're losing 80% of them, 90% of them. That's just not acceptable for me as a boxing fan, and I can't understand why people would empathize with the other side of it. I can't understand why big-time content creators would come out and tell me on Twitter when I complain, big-time content creators here on YouTube and on Twitter, and say, you don't understand how the process works. It's a business. I get frustrated with hearing it's a business. The more this thing resembles a business, the worse it is for me as a boxing fan. I understand their interests are different than mine. I fully get it. I get it. That's the part you're not understanding is we do get it. We do get they're in it for the money. We're in it for the sport. We get that. We get that. All we're saying is we're losing more of these battles. We're losing more of them. And saying, well, you need to just step away. You need to, if you don't like the pay-per-view, don't watch it. If you don't like the fight, then you're telling me to become a casual at that point, because now I only have 10% of fights that I want to watch. You're telling me, like, you're openly telling me to become a casual, and you're a content creator. So your job is to keep more people in the door. So you have more of an audience, but you're telling people to leave or accept it. And instead of pushing back against the system with your platform, you're educated, you have a big platform. And I don't have to name names because people know who they are, and there's a lot of them. There's a growing number of them. There's a huge space now of content creators and boxing fans speaking out for A-side fighters and boxing power brokers instead of speaking out for the fans and pushing this system and explaining it away instead of they'll do a proper job of educating people as to what's going on. They'll do that. I'll give them that. They'll educate people on why things are the way they are, but they'll tell you that there's nothing you can do about it, and you got to go along with it. And what I'm saying is push back against the system instead of explaining it away. That's what they call me all the time, David Duke. And I'll try not to yell into my, when I yell from now on, I'll back up. There was actually a poll Tank against Duran, 73%. And that's what I'm saying. Like, this is what we're dealing with. They'll do mythical matchups on boxing Twitter, Tank versus Duran. Something like that. Charlo against Hagler. And Charlo and Tank will be winning. Gary Russell, Linares, Loma, Farmer, Herring, Haney, Shakur, Campbell. Duck all of them for the last 6 years. Is that beer taking effect on Don Kelly? Leave Tank alone. Leave Tank alone. Those morning beers hit different. That they do. These content creators operate off of groupthink and make money off of these highly miseducated people. We're all tribal. We all have our tribes. My tribe here, and I stated this, my mission statement last year, and it continues, is boxing fans speaking to other boxing fans about how we can further our agenda as boxing fans. I have a boxing fan agenda. That's it. Don't care what you are. Don't care where you come from. Don't care what you look like. If you're behaving like a fighter, I'll support you. And that's it. Everything else gets compartmentalized. My politics, my soul, all that gets compartmentalized. I drop all that at the door. There's a no fanager zone. I drop all that at the door for the sake of boxing when I come in here and speak on boxing. That's it. Don't care where they align, where they come from. They're behaving like a fighter. I'm in. I'm in completely. Completely. So we're all tribal, but what's your tribe? I have a boxing fan tribe. I'm sure outside of that, we're a very versatile tribe. But when it comes to this boxing thing, we're all like-minded. We just want to see the best fights. Do other content creators in their tribes, is that similar? Do you think outside of boxing that they have a versatile tribe? No valid rematch clauses holding up. Better be Bivol. Dimitri ain't that dude. And Nando, your hatred for Bivol needs to stop. Leave Bivol alone. Leave him alone. Bivol is the most versatile fighter in the sport. Bivol was fighter of the year in 2022. Bivol likely going to fight Buatsi, then Canelo in 2023 and have a possibility of becoming fighter of the year in 2023 as well. Nando, leave Bivol alone. Leave him alone. How is that these top 35s haven't fought each other? Tio versus Loma was the only elite matchup we got. This is mad disheartening. And it is. And that's why I said, like, when these lightweights move up to 140, leave the lightweight mentality at the door. I said it earlier on Twitter, like, Tank, all respect to Tank. I like how he fights, knockout artist, but leave 140 alone. I'm telling you. Leave 140 alone. You're not tall enough to ride the 140 roller coaster. I'm telling you. These dudes are built different over there. They have a different mentality. They're not going to take that disrespect, and I think Tiafimo is going to learn that. We was kings, damn it. Put some respect on Al's name. Really don't like the goal. Is that supposed to be code for Wangandia? Chill with that. I don't know what that means. Every time I tell you it's a sport, you tell me it's a business. I tell you it's business. And you, North Dallas 40. Jermall, they know who they are. Tyson, say their name. Oh, yeah. Yeah. But this is where we're at. Golovkin vacates the IBF belt. This is what we're left with. I want y'all to see this one more time and see what 9/11 looks like. This is it. This is awful. This is atrocious. Completely atrocious. This is unacceptable. Unacceptable. A dude with the belt and the title who hasn't fought in 600 days. A 41-year-old who up until yesterday had 2 titles, 2 different sanctioning bodies. Now we have 15 days for Golovkin and Lara, a 41-year-old and a 39-year-old, to decide if they're going to fight each other. And if not, we have a possibility if Zarafa goes the IBF route and fights Falco for the IBF vacant belt, where we have 39-year-old Lara and a million-year-old one-legged Sergio Martinez fighting for a legit belt. And Yanni Beck's sitting over there, and for whatever reason, people think he's a boogeyman and won't fight him. And Chris Eubank Jr., who was number 2 in that sanctioning body, just got washed by a dude with gray hair who doesn't even compete in the weight class. This is this is what it is. This is the middleweight division, fellas. Like, this is it. Easy money in both of them. If I could like white pill y'all for a minute on Tank versus Ryan, I think this is how the PBC builds fights. So I think I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful. Let me get this screen down real quick. I'm hopeful that they're doing all this just as controversy to build up, and you're going to announce the fight Super Bowl weekend. I'm hoping that's what happens. I'm going to be optimistic. I'll be optimistic. But I'll tell you this. If Ryan really is serious, and I'll go back to what I was saying about Ryan, he's behaving like a fighter right now. I do believe he wants the fights. I do believe it. And that's my issue with Tank is he's not, and he went on the podcast and they're asking him, the big podcast, they're asking him, have you knocked on Mayweather's door? Have you knocked on Leonard's door? Have you knocked on Al's door and demanding these fights? And he says no. And that gave me the answer I needed, is I think he's agnostic as to who he fights. I think legacy, he's agnostic to it. As long as the fights are dropping on his lap semi-annually and he's getting his minimums and he's on pay-per-view and he's selling out, I think he's fine. I think he's fine. So it's been on Ryan to make this fight. It's been on Ryan to demand this fight. But if Ryan, I'll tell you what, his backup plan is a lot tougher than his first plan. His first plan is to fight Tank, and that's a smart one. His backup plan is to fight Regis Prograis at 140, and I'll tell you, I think that's an awful matchup for him, but respect for him for actually even throwing that out there and putting that in the universe. And I think they're just using it for leverage. Hey, we're 1 foot out the door here. Come back. You might want to drop this rematch clause. I think that's what it is. But if he's really serious about fighting Regis Prograis as a backup plan, I got to give it to him. Ryan's starting to grow on me a little bit, but we'll see. I'll need to see more than that over time. Adames has been in the queue for far too long as well. I like Adames, but Adames only fought once last year, I believe, as well. So he could be doing more. So real quick, and I'm going to be dropping a short form video on this as well tonight. So be on the lookout for it. Ray Vargas against Oshakwe Foster. Oshakwe, I butcher names here. I like Foster. Like, Foster is a live dog in this fight, and it's getting closer to even odds. And the reason I like Foster in this fight as a live dog is this guy has a foothold. He's a good 130 pounder. Vargas is moving up, but I like Vargas too, because Vargas, there are times when you have to admit when you're wrong. And I was wrong on Vargas after the Magsayo fight. I was too harsh on him. Didn't throw the jab enough, all that stuff. And then you go back and watch the fight, and he actually threw more jabs than his CompuBox average. Magsayo is a guy who's going to make you look a little rough. He's unorthodox. So look out for this fight. This is a good fight. It's a good fight at 130, and Vargas gets full credit if he wins this fight at 130 because Foster is a legit fighter at 130. Look out for this fight. I like Foster. I like how he fights. And he's a real threat to Vargas at 130. So watch out for that fight and watch out for the short form breakdown and preview on that fight this weekend. And Vargas could become a 3-division champion. But Foster's got his own plans. I'm telling you. I would be very surprised if he's willing to get in there with Regis. I would as well, but we'll see. Ryan's a superstar in the making, the new golden boy. Congrats to Charlo for reaching the milestone. And that's it. Like, 600 days. That's a good fight, as is Magsayo versus Figueroa. Yes, it is. And Figueroa is a slight betting favorite against Magsayo. That's a great fight. 600 days is incredible. And it's not just 600 days. I want people to understand this. If you fight 600 days and you're still a champion and you're still winning all the mythical matchups, it's quite the feat. And we got to cheers Jermall Charlo on that. Cheers to Jermall Charlo. Still WBC champion. Still the greatest middleweight today. Still winning all the mythical matchups on Twitter and YTBC and Instagram and TikTok, even though he hasn't fought in 600 days. And we have no idea who he is as a fighter today. Like I said, like imagine the Milwaukee Bucks winning the title in 2021 and they just decide not to play for 2 years and say, we're still the champions. We're still champs. Don't worry about it. Yeah, but you're not playing. Yeah, but you don't need to see me play. I'm still a champion. Still champion. What a broken sport when that can happen. The WBC should be embarrassed. They're not going to be, but they should be embarrassed. And they should be embarrassed. They'd be more embarrassed if more boxing fans would speak out and say, you should be embarrassed by that. Your champion hasn't fought and say, this is your champion. This is the guy who goes out and wears WBC on his chest. We learned that playing team sports, right? Is anytime you wear the name of the school on your chest, you're representing the school when you go out and about. You're representing the team. When you go out and represent the WBC as the WBC middleweight champion, this is the WBC. This is the middleweight division, glamour division, sexy division, traditional division. This is middleweight. And when your champion in the middleweight division hasn't fought in 600 days, that's embarrassing to you. It should be. It should be. Jermall Charlo has no incentive to fight because he's winning all the battles online. Jermall Charlo has no incentive to fight because he doesn't have to defend his belt. I'm sure he's got millions in the bank. I'm sure he's fine. Maybe he's not. I don't know. But what's the incentive to fight? It's a business, right? What's his incentive to fight? He can just hold on to the trophy. That trophy's staying in the trophy case, 600 days. What's the incentive to fight? But when you can pull that off, when you could be a champion of something for 600 days without actually doing anything, it's quite the feat. Cheers to him. But I'll tell you what, we don't do cheers. I'm going to just sit here and drink water now. We don't do cheers. We don't give props to the fanagers out there explaining this away. To the fanagers out there explaining away why a guy has 600 days of inactivity and still has a belt. They're out there explaining why this guy deserves all the big fights, even though he hasn't done anything in 600 days. And he beats all the big name fighters, even though he hasn't done anything in 600 days. So we don't do cheers to them because that's unacceptable. You got to know who your enemies are. And I don't want any enemies. I want to be friends with everybody. But as a boxing fan, my enemy becomes whoever is holding up good fights getting on my television. And my biggest enemy to that, my biggest obstacle to that is becoming the fanagers. And that's why every video I do, every podcast I do now starts with, this is the no fanager zone. Leave your fanager talking points at the door. I don't want to hear them. If business aligns with the sport, if business interest aligns with boxing fan interests, good, great. But that seldom happens. I want a sport. I just want to see good fights. Charlo is the new executioner. Would have been funny. Bivol said, do you want an autograph? 600 days. That's unbelievable. It is. It is. And if we go even further, he's got one fight in, I think, 870 days, something like that. In the past 870 days, like one fight. And you know what the sad part of this is? Like Mel, people know Mel Charlo is in my introduction video with all the belts. That's how a fighter behaves. He went for the championships. He got them. Behaving like a fighter. But Mal is the antithesis of that. And you want to be fans of all these dudes. You do. You don't have anything personal against any of these dudes. You want to become a fan. I love to become a fan of Mal Charlo. I love for Mal Charlo to come back and mow everybody down. Would love to see it. Would love to see it. Would love to see Tank make a 180 and say, you know what? After this fight, I'm going to fight Ryan Garcia, drop the rematch clause. After this fight, I'm going to fight the winner of Haney versus Loma, line me up. After that fight, we'll fight Shakur Stevenson, line me up. After that fight, we'll move up to 140, fight the top dog there. I would love to see Tank make that 180 because Tank doesn't have to have a O in that right-hand column to be Tank. He doesn't. That's the sad part about this is they've marketed this dude as a top all-time great fighter, and they don't have to. They could have just marketed this dude as an entertaining fighter who knocks guys out, who rocks that tightrope, throws 34 punches per round, the most economical fighter in the world, and he's at lightweight, and he knocks dudes out at a high rate, and that's exciting to a lot of people, the tightrope style. They could have just marketed him that way as a fun fighter. If he makes the top 10 pound-for-pound list, he makes it. So what? Whether he does it or not. And people like me would have supported him, win or lose. He loses 3 straight fights, we're still here. Still here. But they marketed the O instead. So if this dude loses, what happens? What happens if this dude loses? His aura goes away if Ryan beats him. If Ryan loses, Ryan's never been marketed as that type of guy. If Ryan loses, we keep it moving, right? As long as he stays true to himself and fights top opposition. But if Tank loses now, they built this monster, the same thing they did with Adrian Broner. When Adrian Broner lost to Marcos Maidana, what happened? That aura left, and it didn't have to be that way. They could have packaged him as an exciting fighter. Win or lose, he's exciting. Thankfully for the Charlos, Jermall. And by the way, can you throw out some names, please? Can you throw out some names here, please? We've been through this, but Basayan, you can't throw. Here's an added obstacle. You can't throw out a guy who hasn't fought in the past 600 days, and you can't throw out a guy who ducked Zach Parker and Jenny Beck. So let's try. Let's try. That's right. Name some names. You're about to have Calix have a flashback to his rant about Black American fighters being called slick. And people who been around long enough know that. It's the laziness, right? It's the and I know where it comes from. But it's the laziness. It's Adam Morrison is the next Larry Bird. Based off of what? How is he the next Larry Bird? How is Adrian Broner the next Floyd Mayweather? How? What are you basing that off of? It's the laziness. Adrian Broner was never slick. Slick African-American fighter. Who's slicker? Jermall Charlo or Caleb Plant? Who's slicker? Be honest. This is what I'm saying. Like, anybody who watches and breaks down film knows, like, when the Charlos have issues is with lateral movement. Right? Who's slicker? Who has a more African-American style? Is it Caleb Plant or is it Jermall Charlo? I don't know. Who has the more Mexican style out of those two? Is it Jermall Charlo or is it Caleb Plant? Who's slicker, Billy Joe Saunders or Morrell Jr.? Who's slicker? Or Billy Joe Saunders? Do Billy Joe Saunders versus Jermall Charlo? Who's slicker? Because when Canelo was at 160, everybody was telling me Canelo would never move up to 168 and fight Billy Joe Saunders because Billy Joe Saunders is a guy with great lateral movement. He's naturally bigger. Canelo has always had a problem. That's another lazy one. Canelo's always had a problem with lateral movement and slick styles. Beats Austin Trout, slick. Beats Arislandi Lara, slick. It's the laziness. And me and Hale used to talk about that all the time when we were covering NBA, and he's covering NBA now, basketballnews.com. Shout out to him. Big platform. But we used to talk about all the time our frustration with the laziness of that. Larry Bird. Adam Morrison's a new Larry Bird. Adam Morrison has nothing in common with Larry Bird. Nothing. And you hope that people get that. Who's slicker? Jermall Charlo or Caleb Plant? Answer it. And I mean, Canelo duck. How can Canelo duck a dude? He wasn't even in Canelo's weight class. And Canelo's trying to tell these dudes, like, all you need is one win. Get your win. He's trying to tell Benavidez, like, dude, and no disrespect to Benavidez, really not. Like, I like Benavidez's style, but dude, if you would have made weight and if you would have kept your nose clean, you would have had the Caleb Plant shot for $10 million. You would have had the golden ticket at the end of the road. You would have made $10 million for undisputed. What are you complaining about? You did it to yourself. Canelo's not the problem. You ruined that shot. You ruined it. You're the reason that you still have to call out Canelo Alvarez because you missed weight and you couldn't keep your nose clean. This is frustrating to continue to explain to people because the lazy narratives are everywhere. They're just everywhere. The good news for the Canelo detractors out there is eventually your guy is going to get the fight. If Benavidez beats Plant, he's going to get the fight in 2024. If Boo Andre does anything of note, I mean, good God. Anybody in 2023 who's defending Boo Andre, I don't know what to do I don't know what to do for you at this point. You're beyond help. That's biblical, right? You just dust off the sandals and keep going, if that's the case. Those people are beyond saving. But if you're still, like, that's a litmus test right there. If you're still defending Boo Andre, for the love of God, for the love of God. Every time I try to walk away, it's the beer, Don. It's the beer. And there's no disrespect to anybody, man. I love everybody. This right here dictates that I have to. I love everybody. But it just becomes frustrating as a boxing fan because, like, in this arena right here, I just want to destroy anybody who is keeping good fights off of my TV because we work hard during the week. We punch the clock. We support our families. We put food on the table. And at the end of the day, on a Friday, Saturday night, we want to leave all of that at the door and just watch a good fight. Attend a good fight. And all of these narratives out here, all of this disgusting and volatile narratives out there, anytime you try to make something personal when it's not supposed to be personal, can't stand it. And undefeated, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's just, they'll continue to move the goalposts, and people will tell you how they view a fighter by their expectations of their fighter. So when somebody says in 2023, Canelo doesn't like to fight slick fighters, slick African-American fighters, you know they're moving the goalposts, and that tells you that they think so highly of Canelo that they continue to do it. I mean, I don't know what to tell you at this point. You think so low of a fighter that a fighter can go 600 days without fighting and defending his belt that you think it's okay for him to keep that belt. And at the same time, you're still trying to talk him into big fights because you know he doesn't have that big win. You're trying hard to talk him into doing something. You think so low of that fighter. You think so low of Boo Andre that you think he's being ducked when there are receipts everywhere saying he turned down this fight because he didn't like the money. He didn't turn down that fight because he didn't like the style, etc., etc. Dude could have fought Zach Parker for $1 million. Got a back injury or something, shoulder, whatever it was. Then the day after called out Eubank Jr. What am I supposed to do with that? Fighting in 30-1 mismatches and he's not even knocking guys out. And I'm supposed to believe that guy can beat Canelo Alvarez? And Canelo Alvarez is scared of that guy? When Canelo, I had these dudes telling me last year that the PBC deal was tougher than the Bivol deal. I mean, just think about that for a minute. They thought that Charlo at 168, Errol Spence at 164, and Benavidez, a guy who he would have fought had he kept his belt, and not lost it on the scale was a tougher deal than Dimitri Bivol. Good Lord. Who's slicker, Dimitri Bivol or Jermall Charlo? Who's slicker? Who's slicker? The most versatile fighter according to CompuBox, the best defensive fighter in the sport according to CompuBox. Him and Shakur Stevenson blimp everybody when it comes to defensive stats. Dimitri Bivol, Shakur Stevenson, by far the best defensive fighters in the sport. It's not even close when it comes to CompuBox stats, and they're doing it against tough competition. Who's slicker? The best defensive fighter in the sport and the most versatile fighter in the sport, according to CompuBox stats, are Jermall Charlo. Who's slicker? Who's slicker? The guy with the best defensive stats in the sport against tough competition, or the guy without a big victory in his career who isn't slick at all? Like, how can you watch Jermall Charlo fight? How can you watch Jermall Charlo fight and say he's slick? I don't get it. Like, Jermall Charlo's a good fighter. That's not what I'm saying. I like Jermall Charlo's style. I like Mel's style. Mel's one of my favorite fighters in the sport. I love that Mel knocks dudes out, and he's fighting tough competition and doing it. He's knocking dudes out, fighting for major belts, sticking around, fighting young lions, trying to fight Tim Tszyu. I fully believe Mel Charlo would fight Sebastian Fundora. He's about that life. Like, Mel Charlo is about that life. But slick? No. I love the fact that this dude arguably lost to Castano, right? Could have went either way, and say, you know what? I'm not leaving it up to the judges this time. We're knocking this dude out. And he knocks him out. Love it. But slick? Mal Charlo. Who in the world watches Mal Charlo fight and thinks slick? Like, is that the first? Like, there are 5 adjectives. 5. The first 5. None of them are going to be slick when describing this dude. Not one. Not one. And Canelo fights Billy Joe Saunders and Caleb Plant, and those guys aren't defined as slick because they're not African American or whatever. Come on, man. Like, please, can we please stop being lazy? Can we please be genuine for a minute? A minute. Nobody in their right mind thinks Mal Charlo is slicker than Caleb Plant and Billy Joe Saunders. Come on, like, be honest. Please be honest. For once, be honest. The lazy narratives. Nobody with 2 brain cells to rub together who follow basketball thought Adam Morrison was going to be the next Larry Bird. It's so lazy. It's so lazy. Vanes, like, that's his win. Vanes. 8-4 Castano. And Castano, more people than not had Castano winning the fight. A lot more people than not. I had it a draw. So I believe I had it a draw. I got to go back and look at that. But what I know is Charlo came in the second fight, won that fight. And what I also know is nobody in their right mind would describe either Charlo brother as slick. Nobody in their right mind would describe Adrian Broner as slick. These are the lazy narratives that we talk about. You know, so I don't really know what to do. Rolly Romero is fighting Alberto Puello, by the way. Did y'all know that? And people are going to start to see the truth about Rolly Romero really quick. They're going to find out really quick that this guy should have lost a decision 2 fights before Tank. The guy was on ice skates the fight before Tank. And they're going to find out when he fights Puello, and Puello easily wins that fight. 140 is a different beast. You're talking about different dudes with different mentalities up there. And Rolly's going to quickly get kicked back down. Especially outside the ring. Yes, Zab was slick. Zab was slick as hell, especially early in fights. What I loved about Zab is the same as Pernell Whitaker, is they would stay in the pocket. So a lot of times you would say, oh, they're not that slick because they're getting hit. That's not what's happening. They're staying in the pocket, keeping their hands free, and they're trying to make you miss by this much and then send you to hell with a counter. That's what's happening. A lot of times new age boxing fans view, because inside boxing is not, if you go to boxing gyms locally, they're not teaching inside fighting anymore. They're rarely teaching body punching. Zab was an inside fighter. Pernell was an inside fighter. James Toney was an inside fighter. And people will see, oh, those guys got hit a lot. Yeah, but they were keeping their hands free. They're not holding. That's another thing. Like, do we consider Hopkins and Mayweather better defensive fighters than guys like Toney, Whitaker? The skill level, like that tightrope we talk about, it's a lot more dangerous when you're keeping your hands free and trying to punish the opponent. Floyd was able to do that at 135, but as he went up, much like with Hopkins, more holding, and it's seen as great defensive fighting. And it is, if you get away with it, it is. I'm not saying those guys weren't great defensive magicians. I'm not saying that, but yes, I consider Zab slick for sure. For sure. No doubt about it. If he's white, he's deceptively athletic. That's right. Deceptively athletic. These are the lazy narratives we talked about in the past, and Hale used to talk about that all the time. If you're white, you're deceptively athletic. If you're a great white basketball player, you're the next Larry Bird. When Adam Morrison had a lot more in common with a lot of black basketball players than he did Larry Bird. I'm just saying. So on that note, man, I think I've offended enough people today. I'm out. See y'all tomorrow around the same time. God bless. Peace.